Hey, kids, and all you folks out there that have decided to join in this reading of the Chaplains and Clergy of the American Revolution, 1864 book. And we're just going to start jumping into chapter 33. So buckle up, here we go. This is chapter 33. Alexander McWhorter. His early life, zeal in the cause of liberty, sent south by Congress to rouse the inhabitants, accompanies Washington in his retreat through New Jersey, made chaplain of Knox Brigade, leaves the army, settles in North Carolina, his library and furniture destroyed by the British, flees to Pennsylvania, sent to England to raise funds for Princeton College, revisits his native place, and then his death. Wow, this sounds pretty exciting, as all of them are. Although the subject of the following sketch moved amid some of the most stirring scenes of the Revolution and was identified with many of its leading events, the details and incidences necessary to a proper appreciation of his service are sadly wanting. He was born in Newcastle, Delaware, July 15, 1734, though his parents removed when he was a mere boy to North Carolina. He was licensed to preach in 1758 and continued to discharge his duties as pastor with great success till the breaking out of the Revolution. He was at the North in search of health when the Battle of Bunker Hill set the land in a blaze, and immediately flung himself with such zeal into the struggle that Congress sent him to North Carolina to rouse the people to take sides with the other colonies. His enthusiastic appeal kindled the hate of the Tories of the state, and he was pursued with the utmost malignity and met with such determined opposition that he at length abandoned the effort and returned to the North. In the summer of 1776, he received the degree of Doctor of Divinity from Yale College. The next winter found him by the side of Washington in the gloomy retreat through New Jersey, and on the frozen banks of the Delaware, concentrating with him on what was to be done for the salvation of the state. On the night of December 26th, he marched through the driving sleet to Trenton, and with a heart full of joy and devout thanksgiving heard the shout of victory that lifted the land from the abyss of despair, and shed a bright though transient gleam of light on the all enshrouding darkness. He gave his whole time and effort to the army, encountering hardships and making sacrifices for the common good with a cheerfulness and zeal that endeared him to Washington and other officers. In the summer of 1778, General Knox made an urgent request that he should become the chaplain of his brigade, then encamped with then encamped with the main army at White Plains. He consented, and frequently in his sermons to the troops had Washington for a hearer. The latter esteemed him highly and often invited him to headquarters. During the summer his wife was struck with lightning, and though not killed, received such a shock to her constitution that he left his duty to resign his chaplaincy and return home to attend to her and the family. In 1779, he received a call from the congregation of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, and at the same time an invitation to be president of Charlotte Academy. Both of these he accepted. He had not been settled here long, however, when the approach of Cornwallis, spreading devastation on every side, compelled him to flee with his family. On his return, he found that his library, furniture, and other property had become the spoil of the invaders, and, fearing repeated attacks, he left the place and set his face northward. He preached afterward for a few years in Abington, in Pennsylvania, but in 1802, after Princeton College was burned, he, at the earnest request of the trustees, went to England to solicit aid for its re-erection. In his old age, feeling a strong desire to visit his native place in Delaware, he took a colored servant and, in a light carriage, traveled slowly to Newcastle. Dr. Murray of Elizabethtown thus relates the following incident of this visit obtained from Dr. Miller of Princeton. Quote, driving up to the door of the house in which he was born, now old and dilapidated, he asked a woman who came to the door who lived there. Being answered, he asked again who lived there before them. Having received a reply, he again asked, who lived there before them? The woman could not tell. He then asked her if she had ever heard of a family who once lived there by the name of McWhorter. What name did you say? Said the woman. McWhorter, replied the doctor. I never heard of such a family, said she. He then drove to a neighboring house where an uncle, a brother of his father, used to live. He asked the same questions and received the same answers. Returning to his house of his birth, he left his carriage and asked for a tumbler, saying, there is one place here that knows me and that I know. And, leaning on the arm of his servant, he hobbled to a spring at the bottom of the garden from which he used to drink when he was a boy. He stood over it for some time and drank of its water until he could drink no more. He then hobbled back to his carriage, repeating these words as he entered it, the tears streaming from his eyes. The places that now know us will know us no more forever. He died the 20th of July, 1807, calm, patient, and at times triumphant, and passed to his reward. The noble patriot, however, lived to see his country not only free, but rapidly advancing to that rank among nations which he has since taken. Wow, such an interesting story. And yet, you could say that it's a sad ending, that he would go back to that house and nobody there knew them, nobody even knew the family name. We take and we look in Proverbs and we see kids that, were like dust in the wind. And that, that's much of what it is. I don't know. I don't think your dad have ever taken you to a graveyard. A lot of history in graveyards. A program called The History Hunter goes to the graveyards a lot of times. The majority of the people in graveyards are forgotten. The only ones that we read about are those that books are written about for some reason, but in the long run, many, many people, even our own families, if we don't have pictures of them or anything like that, they're forgotten. We don't know who some of them even were. But one thing that you have to remember, God never forgets any of us. He never forgets any of us. And especially those who take and call on His name for salvation and who do His purposes, we are in His remembrance forever. So if we take anything as well from this great patriot, is that we can look around and say, who will remember me? But know fully and completely that as sad as that may seem in the natural, that people have forgotten him, the reality is that God always remembers us. So we'll come back around for another chapter here in a bit, and that will be chapter 34, Moses Allen. Chapter 34 will be Moses Allen.